Today's story was written by Reddit user FoxKorp. Guns, guns, guns! Thousands of railgun bolts thundered their way towards the plantoid behemoths, ripping massive gouges into their once living hulls. Massive barrages proved to be highly effective against the ships with crippled mobility. Fox 2! Infrared-guided missiles burst out from hundreds of slots in human ships, racing to destroy any engines on alien ships. They effectively crippled the mobility of large ships and wholly incinerated the hulls of smaller support ships. Fox 5! Only the largest of human warships would announce such a code. It insinuated the firing of gargantuan spinal-mounted fusion lancers, striking with insane force and arriving nearly instantaneously. These monsters gutted many a Xeno dreadnought. Their chaos was absolutely beautiful. Human ships demonstrated their incredible engineering flawlessly. Losses in the Sol system were extremely low, the alien invaders being repelled with little loss of life. 13,000 of the plants were incinerated and flung into the vacuum when their ship, the Leaves of Justice, was directly hit by a fusion lance to its bow. The ship was completely eviscerated from bow to stern. Only a steaming heap of biochar was left in its wake. Only a second later, hundreds of railgun munitions slammed through the shields of the infernal winds, and the bodies of its crew turned into fine paste by the resulting decompression of the vessel. Every support ship within a distance of 200 miles behind it had a similarly gruesome fate. Hidden defensive platforms unleashed fury upon the invaders, and barrages of missiles, lancers, and kinetic munitions slammed the enemy lines in unison. The symphony of destruction they directed was so magnificent that the civilians on Ganymede could only stare at the sky and watch the numerous nova-like explosions above. The carnage was over within an hour of its beginning. Humans had successfully destroyed over 15,000 of the plantoid ships, only taking 100 losses in return. The debris field filled the void from Jupiter to Mars. Millions of the invaders now floated lifelessly in the void. Earth was safe. Ships from Earth began the FTL journey to Trappist and Centauri. Centauri could hold out for reinforcements. Trappist, however, was in a dire state. Admiral Krieger. Sir, we've lost another destroyer. Order the Rust Bucket, Ramming Speed, and Gunrunner to jump into the enemy fleet, drop mines, and jump back out. Yes, sir. The three ships did as commanded. Sadly, the Rust Bucket couldn't jump out in time and got caught in its own antimatter blast. The crew of 1,500 took down 57 alien ships in exchange for their sacrifice. The other two ships escaped unscathed. Ramming Speed took down 32 ships, and Gunrunner took down 71. The carrier, Enlightened Idiot, has taken 15 direct hits. It's venting atmosphere. Tell the crew to overload the reactor and set off all munitions. Evacuate all personnel. The ship went up in a gargantuan fireball, evaporating hundreds of alien vessels and flinging shrapnel into hundreds more. Only 150 of the 32,173 crew made it out alive. How many of the citizens have evacuated the planet? Admiral Krieger's first officer didn't respond. How many? The first officer remained silent, a single bead of sweat dripping off his forehead. 10 out of 800 billion have successfully evacuated. How much longer do they need? Projections show about 15 hours. God help them all. The Admiral's flagship unleashed a volley of kinetic fire, ripping 72 ships to shreds before jumping randomly once again. 20 more human ships were gutted by enemy fire, taking down 150 enemies in their ensuing explosions. Sir, alien ships have breached the 6th quadrant. Hundreds of alien vessels smashed through the human lines, racing towards the exposed planetary surface. Mines were detonated, destroying all the ships, but not their debris. Thousands of tons of biological composite alloys rained down upon the helpless citizens of TRAPPIST-4. Millions were crushed as their high-rise homes collapsed under the weight of innumerable alien corpses. Hours dragged on and human numbers kept getting lower and lower. Alien ships kept breaching the defensive perimeter, killing more and more innocent civilians with each shot they fired through the weakened planetary shield. Admiral Smith was only 2 hours away. If the fleet could hold out for that long, the system could be saved. Krieger had lost all of his civilian military ships, either to the enemy or to retreat. Only 100 of his 250 ships remained to hold the ever-thinning line. Every second that passed, thousands of humans died on the surface. The fleet simply couldn't hold back the alien onslaught. Every space elevator on the planet had been destroyed, and over 200 billion humans had been bombarded from orbit. Only 50 billion made it off. With the destruction of Krieger's last supercarrier, the Hornet's Nest, he finally gave the order. All hands, lay mines and retreat. His voice wavered as his mind shattered. The world he swore to protect was now just a pointless waste of military life. After double-checking his decision with Westman, the fleet made an emergency jump to the edge of the system. Soon after, a long-range transmission came from Governor Schmidt. "You did your best, Krieger. You saved 50 billion lives. Time for us to take matters into our own hands." Krieger could only watch in horror as the planet he had protected for half a century was lost to the alien horde. Governor Schmidt. Throughout all the years, Schmidt had overseen life on TRAPPIST-4. He never thought he would be forced into activating the dead man switch. The same Kugelblitz that provided energy, life, and a planetary shield for the planet could be turned into a massive bomb with a little help from its enveloping Penrose sphere. The energy had been built up over the span of multiple months. The decision was his to make. Reinforcements were over 2 hours away. The bombardment was only increasing in intensity. The alien menace had chewed through 10 of the 20 miles of crust required to reach his underground bunker. Billions died every second. Everyone would surely die if he did or didn't act. His only choice was to die or die fighting. To the former heavyweight champion of the Human Boxing League, the choice was obvious. Do it. It started with a rumbling in the core of TRAPPIST-4. Earthquakes rocked the planet as the pressure was allowed to build to critical levels. Mass injectors shut down, plunging the Kugelblitz into evaporation. A multi-megaton explosion ripped the containment field to shreds. All the energy stored by the Penrose sphere was instantaneously and explosively released. The entire planet and everyone on it, as well as the 12,000 remaining enemy vessels in orbit, were completely shattered. Hundreds of billions of humans went out, not with a whimper, but with a bang. To the human fleet far away, the sight was the most tremendous thing imaginable. An explosion of unimaginable scale pierced the heavens. A small supernova was what it most closely resembled. If it weren't for the tremendous sacrifice and loss of life, it could be misconstrued as beautiful. The ecumenopolis that had stood as a testament to human ingenuity for hundreds of years was completely and utterly gone in a second. Raw emotion washed over not only the fleet, but all of humanity who witnessed the horrible sacrifice of TRAPPIST-4. Rant Yaul. The mind belonging to a human scientist named Albert was unlike anything Rant had ever come across. His genius was unrivaled by any scientist he'd ever encountered in the galaxy. It was so incredibly sad to see a man of such brilliance brought down to such despicable acts. It was even harder to know he was the man responsible for the human RKMs. The genius of one man had resulted in the deaths of hundreds of trillions, maybe even more in the future. For now, Rand would work with Albert. Both men hoped to put an end to the mindless slaughter. When word reached the pair about the destruction of Trappist-4, it only seemed to strengthen the humans' resolve. The two were working on a way for a volley of RKMs to target and destroy the pylons generating the anti-FTL field around Bliss. It took the two only 45 minutes to successfully set up all the necessary parameters. I hope one day you will forgive me. Rand was stunned by the sudden change in topic. You did what you needed to do to survive. I can't blame you for being desperate. Albert didn't say anything, but knew that the alien next to him was lying. He could, and was lying. The blame was squarely placed on him. The two watched on in ashamed silence as the RKMs flawlessly executed their mission. Each and every pylon was annihilated. The road to Bliss lay exposed. A transmission was sent to Bliss, detain Councillor Kutan, and surrender unconditionally to the Human Republic or be destroyed. To Rand Yawl's horror, the message was disregarded. He could only watch as Admiral Westman pushed a single button, launching an RKM and ending the lives of 2 trillion on Bliss. Kutan and everyone else on the surface of Bliss were incinerated instantly. She died alongside the lowest of criminals, the richest of oligarchs, and the poorest of the homeless. Her position as High Counselor secured nothing but her own demise. Her months of mindless bloodlust simply ceased to exist, alongside every other molecule of the planet, reduced to mere atoms. The government of the galaxy was completely decapitated. The once unified and grand republic shattered into hundreds of thousands of independent systems, all scrambling to fill the power vacuum. The remaining 25,000 council ships now drifted aimlessly, still attacking defenseless human colonies and attempting to restore order across the galaxy. Their efforts were meaningless compared to the gargantuan expanse of the Milky Way, but that didn't stop them from trying. Humanity was in shambles, trillions were dead, its fleets were shells of their former selves, and the populace was scarred. Every economy crumbled under its own weight, pushing humanity into another Great Depression. The rest of the century would be defined by countless ethnic conflicts and civil war. The entire galaxy regressed in both ability and technology. The ashes of planets of yesteryear were completely unsalvageable. Only space dust remained to tell their legacy. However, out of the ashes, humanity still stood. They had not been exterminated, only momentarily dimmed. The following centuries would be remembered as some of humanity's finest. Great expansion and progress flowed throughout the galaxy. The aliens were still scarred by the war, and everyone was rightfully fearful of the humans. Life went on, but the minds of quadrillions were stuck in the past. The galaxy had been forever changed, star systems rearranged, and trillions faded into obscurity. Only one thing was certain for the future. It would be a human future.